Are you on a forklift?
Yeah, yeah.
You are a son of a bitch.
Un saluto a
Hey.
tutti.
All right, everybody. Sorry about the technical difficulties prior, but yeah, we've got obviously a very, very incredibly touchy subject. And sadly, this is what's going to make Nima make his debut on the show here. All right. But for the most part, we are actually fans and enjoy the content created with the Italian Football Podcast. All right.
Thank you.
Start off by saying thank you for that because we do enjoy that content a lot. Obviously, you created a stir, but in your defense, it wasn't necessarily you that created that stir. We're not going to get into really that or get into because the other gentleman is not involved in this show or anything.
Yeah.
So we're not really going to get into that, but we're going to take a broader look at the actual problem. And it's not a problem that is solely secluded to a club. It is not secluded to Italy, even, okay? And it is a very, very serious matter that I feel, especially if we're just going to talk about Serie A, whatnot, the FIGC has missed the mark over and over and over again, in my opinion. But we're going to take a broad look at it and we're going to try and take our allegiances to our clubs out of the mix because that is the biggest problem I have with everything right now. And Omar and Nima both agree with that. Okay, so that is going to be what guides the discussion today. Nima, thank you for joining us today and taking the time and whatnot. And I think we're going to have, honestly, I think it'll be a solid discussion. And obviously, with the events yesterday and wild outlook and whatnot, people could see it however they want. Again, we're going to stay away from that. But, let's take us through your thoughts on the game, first of all, Inter Juve, that was actually played. And now, of course, unfortunately, we have to deal with this days after, and it's still lingering. And again, we'll get into it, but we all feel the whole point is getting missed. But, Nima, your thoughts on the game first, and then we'll get into the events.
Well, thank you for the invitation and thank you for that introduction. I appreciate the support. Of course, as I said, before we got cut off, look, everyone has bias. Everyone has bias and has in life, not just in football, but in politics or music or whatever. Everyone has a bias. But the difference is to acknowledge that and be honest and whether or not you're honest and factual. And as a journalist, that's what you have to do, or as a human being, I think that's what you have to do. You acknowledge your biases and then you look at the facts. And if you don't like the facts, you adjust your views accordingly. That's how I live my life. And that's where I am with all of this, broadly speaking. As to the gentleman in question and the tweet in question and the stuff that was said, he's not here, so I don't think it's appropriate for us to talk about that. I've done a piece, a news piece on it on Sempre Inter, and the reason I did do that is because the gentleman in question is an official employee on a media platform by Juventus, which makes it newsworthy. Otherwise, not interesting. If he hadn't been, I wouldn't have touched it. I wouldn't have cared. But the fact that he works for Juventus officially and there's that connection, it makes it news. And not reporting that would have been, I would not have done my job. Now, if we talk about the game itself, I thought it was a game that it wasn't maybe the best game ever, but I liked the intensity. I liked the approach by both teams. I was a little bit surprised in the first half that an Allegri team would struggle with Inter's with the movement in midfield, but when Inter play diagonal balls from left to right or right to left, because that's what Inter's Inzaghi always does. I felt like Juventus were a little bit unprepared for that, which was, well, not unprepared, but not able to handle that, I should say, in the first half. But of course, Allegri at halftime adjusted, and the game was very evenly matched after that. And then, of course, the more the game went on, it felt like Juventus were stronger, and the Inter were running out of gas a little bit, which seems to be Inter's problem. They don't seem to finish games really well, whilst Juventus are really good at ending games, and as have always been under Allegri's tenure all years. So I think overall, I look at that game, I look at the chances created. I think, it's I think a draw was the fairest result if you look at the game and as a whole and the chances created and the preponderance of everything. I think it was the fairest result to draw, and then it's completely open into the second. And when we go into the second leg, because for me, my feeling when Quadrado scored that goal is that's the winning goal that takes Juventus to the Coppa Italia final. Because I didn't think that Inter would be able to come back in this game or the next game.
Yeah. Then, of course, we get the equalizer, the PK, and this kind of stems the tone for what has been an incredibly frustrating several days for, I think, any football fan. And it should be. It should be based on what happened. Nobody has condoned the actions. This is problem I have when people are labeling fan bases as racist and whatnot, because I've never done it to any of the other fan bases in a lot of other instances. And we can go back to 2019 when Serie A really wanted to spark this change in racism and whatever in Calcio, and they led things off with a poster that had monkeys on it. Okay, that's how they kicked off their strong defense of racism. Okay, in 2019, I have a list of examples. 2019, this was the year they really wanted to make a push. 2023, fast forward to 22-23. This is what bothers me when fan bases get labeled, not just Juventus, any fan base getting labeled as racist, because the Serie A season kicked off, and in the first match, it was Osimhen who literally faced racist chants and whatnot. In 22-23, the list goes on and on. The kickoff from the return from the World Cup saw Umtiti and Banda basically essentially left in tears leaving the pitch. And that was from a visiting sector. It's wild to me. People have to take fandom out of the equation, all right? Because it has nothing to do with it. There are assholes everywhere, and I'm sure you have. And it's also beyond ultras with which people have tried to tie to and stuff. It's beyond that as well. It is a major, major cultural issue for me, the way I look at it, and we have to take this out. So Lukaku deals with this, and it sparks with the fact that also he is essentially, and I couldn't believe it in the post-match podcast, I said there has to be something else to get him sent off rather than that gesture that
well, that's also something we should discuss. I mean, how the Serie A and the referees and the league handles it, because that's part of how their response to these things, which is always baffling, late, stupid, archaic, whatever adjective you want to use. I think you could use that to correctly describe it, but that's a separate issue. I think if we're first going to talk about how racism in Italian football, look, racism is something that exists in various degrees to various severities in every corner of the world. That's a societal issue. But what we're seeing in Spain and Italy, specifically Spain and Italy, and we don't see it as much in Northern Europe, even though I don't think that I'm not saying for 1 second that the north of Europe is less racist than the south of Europe. Absolutely not. I'm talking about football. There is no doubt that the Premier League handles these situations levels better than both La Liga and Serie A, because they've been working at it for decades. The Serie A has not. Whatever they have done has been half-hearted at best. It's been ill thought out, and it's best described by the 2019 anti-racism campaign with the chimpanzees. Now, that artist who drew those drew those paintings, that's his job. I actually like his art. I actually like his work. What he does is put chimpanzees in human situations, all kinds of human situations, because his overarching point is that we're all apes, we're all human beings are apes, we're all monkeys, and he's playing with the idea. That's what a artist does, questions and creates, you know, it questions beliefs and wants to create a debate around that. That's an artist's job. My problem is that it in 2019, yes, we all know, anyone who finished middle school science knows about evolution. That's nothing new. But to to use that in 2019 and put chimpanzees there was just so incredibly tone deaf. It was stupid and an own goal. And that's what the Italian football authorities constantly do. It's own goal after own goal after own goal on these issues. They don't know what they're doing. Um, what happened against Lukaku, like you said, is not new. It's not the last time. It's not just at Juventus Stadium. It's pretty much in every single stadium in Italy from north to south. It happens all over Spain. And nothing is done about it because it doesn't, they don't seem to, the clubs and the people in charge don't seem to understand and don't seem to realize the gravity of this, how to stamp it out. And there's no coherent response or action to this. And so you see this shit show repeat itself time and time and time again, with people turning it into football tribalism, turning it into my team versus your team discussion, which it has no business at all being.
Mm-hmm.
And while all of this is going on, the entire world is watching, and Italian football continues to embarrass itself, continues to humiliate itself, and it's exhausting, and it's facepalm after facepalm after facepalm situation.
Yeah,
and that's where I am with this a little bit, overarching.
well, and that's just it. I mean, missing the mark. Omar, we've talked a lot about it, about missing the mark and whatnot. Your thoughts on just it in general, and we will get to penalties and rulings and whatnot because things have been issued outside of this game. Some of them had to do with altercations and whatnot, but we'll talk about even Lukaku getting sent off. But your general thoughts?
Well, I think that whenever you deal with these issues that are bigger than football, racism is a bigger issue than football. Then you have to take your football hat off and look at it in a broader way. And what it does is just it's ruining everything. It's ruining society and it's ruining football. I think that incident in the end overshadowed and ruined a great Derby d'Italia. Not a great football match, but a great Derby d'Italia. And that's what everyone will remember from that specific match. So there's a case of racism just ruining another thing that I rather enjoyed up
Yeah,
until that point.
yeah,
And it's bigger than football. I mean, football is a hobby for me. I watch it because I love it, and these are the type of stuff that will get everyone away from it and keep getting me all the things I hear about football fans and the way they act and behave, and we're not part of that. And I
yeah,
hate that that's the image I get because of stupid stuff like that.
yeah. Gandalf, I see Gandalf the Black. Love the name. I see you in the comment section. We will get to Juventus-based comment probably when we sign off with Nima here. But this discussion obviously is going to carry on as we get through this. So we see the events that unfold with Lukaku there. Obviously, little bit of an outburst because of a lot of people not understanding why he was sent off. I simply couldn't believe that it would be for that celebration. I thought it was minor in the grand scheme of things. The Rocky came out after, and I believe that was on the official report that it was for that celebration towards the fans. And Rocky said that the referee was right. Look, I'm not even touch that one because again, it's that it's the fact of what he was facing from the crowd that creates a bad look, and that in its own is almost a whole nother discussion. It's crazy, but in the aftermath we get into all this essentially just this battle that for me this is where the problem lies, because from our point of view, okay, it starts to become, and you start to hear, and it's all Juventus this, Juventus that, and all of a sudden, if you try and say, look, and you try and point, to these other circumstances that show you it is not a Juventus thing. This is a much bigger issue. You get thrown with almost this new term that is absolutely ridiculous to me, which is whataboutism that people are throwing all over social media now. And I say, look, there are no degrees to racism. Kostic walking through a curva, being called a zingaro, is equally as important as what Romelu Lukaku went through in Juve's stadium. They are the same, okay, and should be treated as such. So it's not even that Juventini are having an issue with being penalized whatsoever. It's the fact that you can't even look at something. There has been situation after situation after situation just in 22-23 alone, let alone dating back to when Serie A really want to make this push in 2019, which had a lot of instances through 2019. And I can shine a light on some of these. But the problem for us is that if you are going to set out some punishments, you have to make it equal and treat all circumstances in the same manner. There has to be some level of consistency. So for Juve fans to want that type of acknowledgement, at least acknowledge that there has been, 8 other instances, I think, this season that have gone unpunished. For that simple piece of acknowledgement, I think that is more than fair. Guys? Like Nima?
I think that if the instances you're referring to going unpunished are a disgrace. That's how I see it. I see it as a disgrace. And what do I mean? Like, ask Zlatan Ibrahimovic or any player from the Balkans who's played in the Serie A for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years about the racism and the anti-Ziganism that they have to endure. Okay? That's not even up for debate. If you deny that, you're a flat earther. It's as simple as that. And it's not just Juventus. It's everyone with roots in the Balkans or anywhere near there. That's just how it is. But this notion that we can't punish one because we didn't punish one before is ludicrous. If the authorities missed a racial attack on Kostic, that's bad enough. But to use that as a baseball bat to say, well, they shouldn't punish Juve fans now is ludicrous to me. I don't understand that logic. I think if there is no logic. If someone has missed something before, then you address that issue. You don't give someone else, use that as a pass in the future for racism.
And I don't think that's what's going on, though. Omer, nobody's using that as a pass in pointing the light to the others. It's about asking for a standard
There
set.
should be
And
consistency.
through all those instances, I will say this. What has Juventus done since Tuesday? They've worked with the authorities, and they have found the culprits, and they have set bans. And there's probably more to come. There has
to be more, because that's another thing. 2 people, I mean, look, that's another thing. The FIGC had 3 delegates at the game, okay? They handed in a report, and their report was very, very clear. They named the curva, the stand behind the goal, and because they have the official match attendance divided per stand, they could give a number of people that were in that stand, and they concluded that it wasn't one or few, it wasn't 1 or 2, it was a majority of the people in that stand. Now, I am also something I'm exhausted with is this notion of treating this as if we're counting vegetables in a fruit market, in a market. Stop that. A few bad apples. No. This is an epidemic in Italian football. This is not a few bad apples. This happens every single weekend when it's football played in Italy from north to south. It's not a few bad apples. I don't even care how many it is. The fact that I don't care in the sense that I don't care how many it is because I don't think it justifies or makes anything better. Okay, we all hear it on we all, everyone who watches the games on TV hear it. People there hear it. The players hear it. That's where this should end. The issue should be how is this stamped out. I'm tired of these stupid debates about how many people did it and it's a few bad apples and you shouldn't do this, that, or the other. No, that's irrelevant. The solution part is that's when you go into how do you best address this, and do you shut down an entire stand? What has happened before? For example, when Inter's Curva, the disgusting chants against Khalidou Koulibaly, they shut down Inter's Curva for 3 games. So, and I thought that was okay. I had no major problem with that. So there is consistency to shut down a Curva after you have racist chants towards players. So again, I think this discussion can't stand. We can't turn this into a football tribalism issue. There has to be a protocol for how you handle when these things happen, and they have to be applied across the board. And it has to have a start date. We have to go say, okay, from the 1st of August, 2024-2025 season, this is what happens every time there is a football, there is racism in the stands. Because if we're going to go back to what happened with 2019, 2017, we're never going to get anywhere, and nothing's going to be done. It's paralyzing. This debate is paralyzing,
Now,
and it can't be paralyzing because it's too important.
yeah, we are going to get into the thoughts of the punishments and everything, and obviously banning sectors and whatnot. But for me, like I said, a couple have been punished. That is still, like I said,
That's good, but it's
it's
still
good.
it's
And
only two
if it's
people.
to
But we
now
need to
say
do
all
more.
of a sudden it's not satisfactory, well, they have the resources and they are using them. But I think part and parcel, what the punishments are and the standards set by the league need to coincide to help the matter. Omar, your thoughts first of all on kind of let's get into punishments, banning sectors and everything, because this has been something that okay, and again going to this. So Inter has obviously had their curva shut down, whatnot. I think overall, in terms of closures, Juve's had about 4 or 5 over the past. I don't know how many years exactly, but we have had many. And again, we are not by any means not, and I'm not using this as some type of argument or whatever to not get a curva, because for me, I actually agree we should ban the sector. But what I'm saying is, there's a lot of frequent um, uh, issues with certain clubs and fan bases. And again, I want to take this kind of out of it too, because it's just overall a whole problem league wide and outside of our league. But they haven't had the shutdowns and everything. So Juventini get frustrated when we don't see some type of consistency. And again, I don't see Juventini out there banging a drum saying that we should not be punished. I don't see that. I don't see that at all, because all of us are fine. All of us are disgusted. Okay. And if you're not disgusted by these types of actions, there's a much bigger problem there. Okay. Because you should be. But banning a sector, these guys are getting frustrated because of the lack of consistency in terms of the punishments and what happens elsewhere. So again, since the last time, I can't tell you how long it's been since our last Gurva shutdown. I think there was one last season. However, you have multiple instances since then, again going back to without punishment. So people turn this into what about is, but it says, well, now you have season ticket holders and we continue to pay, yet the league doesn't make a standard protocol. So I believe that everybody is within the right to ask for a standard protocol in order to help these clubs. Now, Omar, what do you
Absolutely.
think about these banning sectors, punishment? Is there anything else you would like to see as well?
I absolutely agree with it. That's what we should do for everyone, for every team, for every act of racism in football should have a similar reaction. And like Nima said, going back to the past and looking at other instances doesn't matter anymore. We should look forward. They should set a standard and integrate that into the law the same way they did in England in the 90s with the hooligans, and actually said, okay, this is what happens if you do this one time. This is what happens if you do that for a second time and a third time, and it worked. It saved English football. literally, and that's where Italy needs to go. That's where the FIGC need to go. Though I'm skeptical because of what we saw in the past, but I can only hope they'll do the same. And every time it happens from now on, if it's Juve who are setting the precedent, fine, no issues with it.
Yeah,
Do whatever you need to do to get it out of football.
I mean,
absolutely.
nowadays, when you buy a ticket to the Serie A, as it is everywhere, you have to use your ID. You know, you have your passport or your ID, and everybody, so you can easily find everyone. Like, it's not the '80s and '90s anymore. That's what they say anyway. The authorities. Now, I hope that's actually what's happening on the ground in reality as well. That every single person, be they an ultra or a normal, just a random guy, average Joe with his family, that's also true of them, that they have to identify themselves and that they are registered, and if they're not, well, that's the problem right there. And that's not a Juve problem. That's an Italian football problem as well. If that is the case, how is it like, where is it like this, and which clubs and how and whatnot, etc. So, and you have to remember, these ultra groups have power. You know, they have power and they have a vested interest, many of them, financially vested interest to maintain that power. One of the good things that Andrea Agnelli did was to take on the ultras groups and kick them out because of the ridiculous, the illegal behavior that they were engaged in. I think he was one of the few who actually showed backbone in that fight, and they hated him for it. As just like when Lazio's ultras hated Lotito, and since then, because he didn't want them to run the club's shirt sales and stuff like that. It's insane. I mean, they shouldn't be. You have to take power away from these groups. There has to be a centralized, organized protocol overall of Italian football, and that's the problem. There isn't. It's incredibly decentralized. It's an incredibly weak organization. These clubs can't agree on even on a Lega president, so they always elect an interim president. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one thing connected to another, right? But this can't continue, because we saw what happened. The entire world saw it. Everyone saw this, and people saying, well, why wasn't there this much attention when Juve played, I don't know, Empoli? Well, Juve and Inter are two of the biggest sides in European in world football. Of course, there's going to be more eyeballs when they play each other. That's not an anti-Juve or an anti-Inter thing. That's just a life fact thing. When Inter and Juve play, more people are going to tune in, and when something like this happens, when more people are tuned in, it's going to have a bigger reaction. Like, it's just, that's just how it is. But the problem is that the way that it's handled is not good enough, in the sense that when Kostic's or Ibrahimovic's or Stankovic's are racially abused, this isn't given the same treatment by the authorities. That's where I have a problem.
That's where
with it.
we are having a problem as Juventini. And that's where it starts to separate, and we start to, maybe just want a little acknowledgement that potentially, given all the circumstances, maybe, and we don't have a problem with it, but maybe, just maybe, FIGC says, yeah, we got to make an example. Again, it could be because of the fact, like you said, it's Inter and Juventus, and it's the Derby d'Italia, so more light is shining on it,
More
and whatnot,
attention,
but
yeah.
that shouldn't be one of their stipulations to act.
Absolutely not.
And that's the major problem Juventini have. And I think it's also marred by, there's such a big mess going on with the FIGC in general right now, and I think how they're handling everything that's going on with Juventus and whatnot. I don't want to get into. Everyone knows how I feel about certain process and lack of setting a precedent with FIGC and whatnot, but nonetheless, I just think everything that's going on is just piling up, and you're taking a little bit of this and you're intertwining it with this and everything. Racism needs to be separated completely and actually dealt with properly if they want change, because you can't penalize here and there and then expect change. I talk about
But
this all
also
the
the
time.
clubs themselves. Sorry, Alberto. I didn't mean to cut you off. But
That's
let's
okay.
just look at how Inter and Juve and the Serie A reacted to this. Just look at those weak, pathetic statements from every single one of them, from Inter to Juve to the Serie A. The Serie A released a statement, not even once mentioning Lukaku's name or which game they were talking about, just this generic copy-paste statement. Juventus didn't really condemn it or just said that they're working with the authorities. And Inter's statement was pathetic. It was weak. I'm so glad that Italian Inter fans completely rinsed the club for that, for their weak statement. Too little, too late, not nowhere near powerful enough. And that's another thing. This they need to update, because the clubs themselves, that they can do. They can start in their own houses. They can have a protocol in place internally and apply that and say, well, we're actually going to lead this. We're going to do this. We don't care what other clubs do until there's a protocol in place. We're going to react to it like this. This is how we handle things when this happens, because our mission is zero at our stadium.
Yeah.
There's a sense of responsibility here that is not being taken by the clubs either, not just the league. And again, the statements from Inter and Juve made me sick.
The statements, I will agree, were probably pretty soft. Omar, would you agree? Like, Juve's was soft. I can't speak to Inter's because I'll be honest, I didn't see it. But pretty soft in your opinion too, Omer?
Yeah, you were generally bad at that. They never address issues the correct way. Any issues, that are bigger than football or something that's not related to the game itself, they were always bad at that. And we have a couple of instances in the past. So I'm not shocked, but yeah, it's horrible. I mean, they have to do better. Like Nima said, it comes from within. Look at yourself and stop looking at others.
Yeah.
And that's true for every club in the league.
Yeah. Nima, Alex just asked, in that situation that you brought up a little bit earlier with the Curva, were any of them handed out bans?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I have to look into that. But I remember that the Curva was shut down for 2 games. Yeah. They were given a ban. But I don't remember what happened if they were able to identify the people. I think this was a long time ago. I don't remember. But I have a slight memory that tells me that they did ban a few. But again, it wasn't a few. It was thousands. Yeah. Same thing with it was a thousand. It was a majority of the people in that stand, and unless you acknowledge that and deal with that, we're not banning a 29-year-old and a minor.
I can't.
Okay.
I'm running off videos. I don't even want to get into the discussion of how many or whatever because I haven't seen it. Jonathan Grade was there firsthand. He was there. Yeah. And he's actually got video recording. He is sending to Juventus, and I hope that helps them identify even more. Jonathan Grade's been a guest here multiple times. Does great work as well. Fantastic writer. I can't speak to that, and I don't even want to touch that because I physically wasn't there. There have been shocking pieces, though, however, with the FIGC's inspectors that have missed blatant racist scenarios and incidents where they said we did not notice it when it was clear as day, not only through fan cams, through the actual video footage, like the actual coverage of the game, you could make it out, and yet that happens too. So this is a mess. This whole thing is a huge, huge mess for the league and everyone involved.
A good example of that is because the Allianz Stadium is a new stadium, and as such, the camera surveillance and the securities around that stadium are modern, much more modern than a Via del Mare or San Siro, who's 40 years old, or Napoli Stadium or Stadio Olimpico, all these old archaic stadiums, and as such, they do say that that's part of the equation as to why they can't guarantee that kind of, to find the people guilty. But I'm tired of these excuses, man. Then just build new stadiums. I'm tired of this excuse.
Surveillance should not be like an excuse as why we can't capture what that doesn't.
It's lazy. Much. It's lazy. It's a lazy bullshit excuse for me. Then build new stadiums, modernize. It's not
Yeah,
Something
harder
all
and
the
than
then they
that.
clubs have
wanna.
tried to do anyways.
Well, exactly, but that's a
That will come up in
Yeah.
our discussion with FIGC. Omar, you were going to bring in a point here?
No, they didn't. Then they want to host the 2032
You know
Euros.
why? But I'm glad you brought that up, Omer. I'm glad you see that's the classic Italian way to do things. First, we get the because when they've secured the championship, they've secured the finals, then they can guarantee the money coming in, and then we can guarantee blah blah blah. That's not how it works anymore. First, you build the modern stadiums, then you get the events. That's how it works nowadays, and that's why Italy hasn't hosted anything of importance in terms of tournaments. Just with the Euros that was divided, it was a few games here, a few games there, but they didn't host anything like like centralized for what is it since Italia 90.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason for that. In Olympics they do, because they have better infrastructure in place for Olympic sports, but they have zero when it comes to football, and because the standard is higher. They're basically waiting like they did for 1990, because when they got the World Cup 1990, that's when they refurbished and remodernized all the stadiums. It's not 1990 anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the
So they'll come
reasons,
after that.
because you see some comments in here talking about the Premier League, and they do have strong surveillance and cameras, and they're constantly chasing. Like I've seen posts, I've seen news, I've seen them working so hard and doing their due diligence to catch the people that are doing that, right? And that's right. That's the right way. So using surveillance as an excuse, I agree, is
Can I
just absolutely pathetic.
No,
And it
it's the
is.
most
It's lazy.
ridiculous excuse.
Now,
It's lazy.
in
I just
terms
wanted
of
to say one
banning,
thing. I just
go
wanted to say
ahead.
one thing on the security and the new stadiums thing. The Premier League, in order to play in the Premier League, you have to your stadium has to fulfill certain requirements. Start there. Say that by 2030 or 2028 or however many years you need, in order to play in the Serie A, it's not enough to just quote win the Serie B. You have to also pass the test in terms of stadium, meaning it has to be modern. That way, you put pressure on the local councils and the bureaucracy, saying, sorry, dude, even if Lecce or Inter or Roma or whoever, if you're not meeting those standards, you don't get to play in the Serie A. Period.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Nima. Because we know most of the stadiums in Italy are not club owned. I mean, there are a select
Mm,
few.
yeah.
How does that correlate? I mean, does it make it
Mm.
surely makes it harder for the teams who possibly want to do it, but who they have to deal
Absolutely.
with the local authorities.
Absolutely, because when we interviewed Thomas Berthold, the former Hellas Verona and Roma guy on the pod, before the pandemic, they had secured basically what they were going to do is a private investor. The model they secured was a private investor had come in, and together with the clubs, they were going to, at the Bentegodi, the ground where it is, because once you've conceded ground, a license on land to do a certain activity like sporting activity, you don't need to apply for a new license. That's there, right? So what they did was they said, okay, we already have a license to have a stadium here. Let's all together, Chievo, Hellas, and these private investors, let's all build a new stadium. We create a company that owns the stadium, and then we all have shares in it, and then we modernize. Then, of course, the pandemic came and everything went to shit, and Kiev was barely around anymore, and all that stuff. But that's a model you could get around that. But yes, that is a huge issue, because public land is not is the councils make money off of this. The Milan City Council makes lots of money renting out to Inter and Milan.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
it's
so
that
does the
simple.
FIGC have any power over them?
None, none,
None.
none.
Yeah, so that's a problem.
But
So
what they
even if
could
they do
do, but
implement
what they
laws,
but what they could do is say you cannot play in the Serie A if you don't hit a certain level of standard, technologically, in terms of building safety and all that stuff. They can do that because the Serie A is a private entity. So
mhm.
they can go about it that way. But then, of course, the councils will get pissed off and start fighting them in court. But you got to start somewhere. This cannot continue. You cannot continue Like everything is gridlocked because everyone is lining their own pockets. Everyone has a vested interest. And the reason why change never happens in any aspect of life, be it political or in this instance, is because the people in power have a vested interest to keep things the way they are. They make
Yeah.
money off of there are certain groups of people who have power and make money off of keeping things the way they are.
Obviously, the owners of smaller clubs, I mean, Lutito and the Atalanta guys, they're making straight hard-earned cash, 40 million for sale. I don't know if they wanna, if it's even beneficial for them to try and go out on a limb and expand and build a new stadium.
Yeah.
Is this the reason Milan want to build their own stadium coming in from Mr.
Yes.
Bublix?
Yes. This is the reason why Jerry Cardinale has had enough of suing Inter's owners and had enough of the Milan City Council and is exploring ways to build on private land. Yes, that is why. And I understand him. I don't know how serious that is or if he's just doing that for tactics, but I do. But I hope he's sincere. For Milan's sake, for Italian football's sake, I hope he's sincere, and I hope that he's got the financial muscles to pull it off.
Yeah. Now, going back to like this whole thing, and do we think this is gonna spark the full-on change from FIGC in terms of like this latest incidents, and have they set the bar now?
I don't want to be negative, Alberto, but I also don't want to gas people up, and I want to be realistic. I think something has to change now because there will be some sort of change. Now, whether or not that is enough or if people forget about it, that's another thing. The pressure has to continuously be on these guys. You have to continuously hold these people's feet to the fire. Otherwise, the next news cycle comes, something else dominates it, and everyone forgets about this until we come here again. That's the issue. I think the pressure has to be kept, and the clubs have to. I think the clubs have to be the ones doing this. They have to understand that although they love their fans and their supporters, there are elements, no matter how big or small the fraction of those elements are within their own fan base, that they have to purge. Simple as it gets. Simple as it gets.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Be-
follow
I'm
up.
sorry, but that's just how it is. Hellas Verona, as an example, there was a documentary on Rai, I think 5-10 years ago. They, every year when they have their like kickoff, they were praising Adolf Hitler and Rudolf Hess.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you expect is going to happen at the stadium when you have this culture, when you have ultras groups with these political views openly praising Adolf Hitler? What do you think is going to happen at the stadium? I mean, what do you expect is going to happen? Of course they're going to sing anti-Semitic chants. Of course they're going to say racist things at the stadium. Anyone with an IQ over 5 understands that. Understands that causality.
Corey coming in here saying, as a black man, it confuses me how a Juve fan could be racist towards Lukaku, and using this example when there are people of color that play for Juventus, obviously. And what does that bring up amongst the locker room? And I've always thought about that across all of these incidents, because it's like you have players on your own club. And again, it gets bigger because if you do start looking at ultra group, there are ultra groups. There are a lot of members of ultra groups that do not care about the club whatsoever. And that
they make money.
Exactly. We've seen this within ourselves. Again, going back to something I shined a light on earlier on in this show, we've had the ultras hold us for ransom a couple times, right, Omer? There's been a couple instances where we've seen them do that for their own benefit, for their own pocket. The latest one that saw the big scandal with Agnelli and everything was that he didn't want them going in there specifically trying to sabotage games and get them fined, get them in trouble, because there was the risk of European ban. We were actually facing a European ban, and they leveraged that against Agnelli and the club to get the team banned from European play, to get what they wanted in terms of blocks of tickets that they could sell. We've seen that. So to think, and this is what kind of, and again, we're not going to get into the other gentleman in question, and everything, whatever. But a scenario, I think he completely missed the mark in not creating enough separation. Okay, but that's a whole different ball. But for me, it just that separation was missing the mark completely. But to talk about people that don't care about the club or would want to maybe sabotage, and in his own words, is a reach. But like, I mean, I could walk to any club, and if we were going to ban an entire sector, I mean, the difference is in Italy. This is why I say it's a much bigger problem than even talking about this small example. But it shines a light. What it does is shine a light on how wrong things are over there. Because if I did that, let's say I walked into a stadium in North America where I live, if I went to any sporting event and I did a monkey chant, I wouldn't make it out of that stadium. I would not be
Alberto, I was
leaving there
spent
in
an
one
hour.
piece.
I spent a good hour yesterday googling, trying to find an example in North America of the professional leagues, MLS, MLB, NFL, NHL, NBA, of this, and I couldn't find anything.
I
I searched and searched and searched and searched. I couldn't find anything. I couldn't even even in Northern Europe for the last 5 to 10 years, very few examples, because I can just go from Sweden where I live. There is a zero tolerance to that shit. Zero. Zero. You're
yeah.
not allowed to mask yourself. There's cameras everywhere. And if you do that, the club will find you, they will ban you, the police will prosecute you. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
I've been to MLS games, Vancouver, and if the profanity got out of hand, those people were approached and asked to stop and shut it down. Profanity, okay?
There you
Profanity.
go.
At an NFL game, you wouldn't dare. You wouldn't dare do that because both fan bases would absolutely destroy you and you would not make it out of that stadium alive. And that is just the way it is. It is much, much bigger. Now, while I say, like I said, that the scenario, whatever, a reach, everything, but there's the difference is if I do that in Italy and whatnot, my expectations of what would happen are completely different because I would expect a few to start joining in.
Oh yeah.
And that's the sad reality that we face.
Okay.
And the
So
reason is because there's no repercussions. When there are no repercussions for bad behavior, it's the bad behavior won't magically stop. It's really not that difficult.
And
And
Omer's
one
gonna
or
get in
two,
here,
and
and
making
my
example of one or
kind
two
of
people.
yeah, and where I wanted to go with that is why I was for, and now I know it sucks for the season ticket holders and all the people that are innocent in this, but this is why I'm for banning a sector because it it should make everybody more willing to take up the stance that what would happen in North America. Everybody needs to help be a solution to this. It's clubs, it's league, and it's also the spectators. Like
Everyone.
the Jonathan Grade, everybody's got a cell phone. Put these people out and keep them out. Help Juventus, help FIGC, help them find all these people and keep them out of the fucking stadiums.
Yeah, it's not harder than that. It's really
Oh,
not, and that's why I think just shutting down the stadium is could be one thing. I'm kind of undecided on that. I don't know where I stand on that,
shutting
but
down the
I think
stadium as a whole.
no, shutting down stands or stadiums and are just generally parts of the stadium. I don't know where I stand on that. I'm a little bit conflicted. I haven't made up my mind. I can see both arguments, but
On
my point is,
closing a
even if
sector.
yeah,
Let's get
closing a
into it.
sector.
Well, why are you conflicted? And
No,
Omer
well,
had a
I
point
don't.
too. Do you want to get that first before the sector talk, Omer?
Yeah,
yeah, it's a quick one for Nima. First of all, if we do hopefully get Super League soon, and we'll have something that's governed
you know where I
by
stand on that.
Americans. Yeah, I mean, should we expect a different reaction? Because I don't think J.P. Morgan or whoever would have any tolerance towards that zero tolerance policy in their competition, the Super League. If we maybe we'll see that, maybe we don't. I don't know. But what can we make of Gravina being the new vice president of UEFA? I mean, Is it going to benefit the Italian league? Are they going to be pressed to do anything about those situations if they want to host this and that tournament?
Well,
Or is it just another comical thing from Syria?
Has
I'll say
UEFA
watch.
ever has UEFA
Yeah.
sorry Nima, has UEFA ever officially thrown out a ban for the chance like to a team? Because we were facing one if we had one more instance, but has it ever
Mm.
actually happened?
I can't remember. I can't remember. I can't remember when the if that happened or right off the top of my head. I honestly can't remember.
Yeah.
I really don't. But look, I say watch this space on that. Omer. It's I, we will have to wait and see what that is. But I mean, of course, Gravina has been a football director for 20, 30 years, 30, 40 years. So of course, he's happy that he's got this opportunity. Italy's a big footballing country at the end of the day. So I don't know what this could imply, but regardless, UEFA, they have their problems with with organizing events, as we saw in the Champions League final, and the blame game and the complete shit show that happened as a result of that. So look, there are no angels here from that as perspective, but I'm tired of these empty words, anti-racism campaigns that when there's no actual protocol involved and there's nothing in place to enforce and there's no repercussions. I think regardless of what happens with the Super League, Italian football has to clean its act up. It's as simple as that. They just got to get their shit together, man. Like,
Yeah.
there's not forget about the knight in shining armor saving your ass. Get your
Yeah.
shit together first. All right,
Yeah.
the Hail Mary. Oh, can someone come say no? Fuck that. Excuse my for language, but screw that. Get your shit together first.
Yeah.
Take
So Mr. Boblik
responsibility.
says there's been no fans banned, but not banning of a club, which they did threaten Juventus at one time to
Mm,
get expulsion for one season if we
mm.
had another instance. But I was curious if that had ever actually gone
I
down
don't
with anybody. So
remember. I can't remember. I know. I mean, we're talking about because of racism, no, but because of yes, violence. Yeah, I mean, English clubs weren't allowed for 5 years. You guys at
yeah,
Juventini would know all too well the
yeah,
tragic events of Hazel. So you know that's just UEFA are part of the problem too. But I don't care about UEFA. Like I want to talk. I want to focus on the Serie A get cleaning its like that's the thing. Yes, UEFA has lots of problems, and we can get to that later. But I want to focus on the Serie A because I think the Serie A needs to clean its own act up first.
now let's get to why you're conflicted on banning sectors.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because I think blanket bans are. I'm conflicted. I can see both sides of the argument. I haven't made up my mind yet. I think as a last resort, I get it. I don't vocally oppose when it happens, and I don't vocally scream for it to happen. I think there are valid arguments on both sides of the argument. I think blanket bans are silly. I, but I also understand that given the situation, you got to sometimes do something drastic. I get that. So I honestly, I haven't made up my mind on that yet. But regardless, I think just closing down sections of the stadium isn't enough. You still need to identify those who did it. You still need to make sure that nobody's allowed to mask themselves when they're at a football game in Italian football. You need to have cameras in place. You need to be able to identify. Every ticket has to go with an ID card or a passport, and you have to that way be able to identify the people who do it.
Yeah, and
That has to be part of it. Does that make sense?
yeah, of course it does. It's just, and I'm thinking about this now. Juve's got a new feature where you can literally plug in your ticket
Yeah,
code and they bring up your picture. Like they have
yeah.
everybody on there.
Have
Like
we got
the technology is
it's
there.
there?
But and I don't know. I obviously we know that's not at every stadium and whatnot. But maybe it needs to be. And I
No,
think
it
it needs to
needs
be
to
a
be.
little bit
Needs
like a
to be.
lifetime ban from the games. Like I said again, going back to a point that I thought, okay, we can all agree, probably over exaggerated, but a lifetime ban for somebody that isn't actually a supporter means nothing. It means nothing. And does it actually solve the problem? Probably not. Probably not.
Yeah, but
Ultimately, There needs
But
to be
when you
more than
said
even just a
this,
lifetime ban from the games, because some of these people might not actually give a shit about the ban.
Of course not.
it should be
But
a
at least they're
rule.
at the stadium. But at least they're at the stadium, Alberto. Like at the end of the
That's
day,
true.
I
But
mean, at the end of the day,
but
you're not gonna. I don't think football it can resolve societal issues,
but
but
my point
get them
is,
out of the stadium.
setting an example of the club doesn't solve it either, though.
No,
So
no, it
if
doesn't.
you were
But
to
it needs.
set, because, and this is not a Juve thing, this is any club that has suffered for this. If you penalize the club doesn't openly invite racism. No club says, hey, come in here,
course it
chant
doesn't.
whatever the hell you want. Like, no club's doing that, right? So to set the club at and make an example of them, okay, that's fine. Whatever. You want to set a zero tolerance, but it's ultimately what you do to those people. So while we go on a notion that, again, that story, a reach, but if you take somebody that has zero elite, because I can go to a game, I could go to any game, I could pick where I want to sit, I could do whatever I want, and if I do that and this team bans me, okay, does that solve anything?
Here's another thing I think should happen as well. I think if you do it in one stadium, the bans should be automatic for all stadiums in Italy, on Serie A and Serie B, not just for the clubs. I think this is the
Yes.
problem. The people who are banned now at Juve, well, they're banned from Juve Stadium and Juve's tickets allotments and away stadiums, but they can still go to the stadiums in every other place in Italy.
Yeah.
That needs to
The,
Yeah, I
change.
I
think
think it
Do you
I
needs.
see
think
what I'm
that
saying? Like there needs to be uniformity across the board. If you are found making racist chants at players at any stadium, at any sporting event in Italy or anywhere, you're banned. Boom, done.
Yes. Yes, that. And you know what? Throw a little more onto it and come out of these people's pockets. They will care. That is probably the biggest. I bet you anything. The biggest thing
Yeah.
that will set the tone is say, these are the penalties you face. Hit them in the pockets, and
Yeah.
that will
Everyone knows
create.
what it means. It means that if you enter a stadium in Italy, they should, again, the uniformity of it. The Serie A agrees. If you enter any stadium in this of a Serie A team or a Serie B, and you do this, this is the penalty minimum, because you can't set like blanket. There has to be, you have to look at every individual. Okay, but minimum 10,000 euros, whatever, and minimum lifetime ban. Boom. If you're proven guilty of that and you're found guilty of that, and it can be discerned and proven that it was you saying those things and you doing those things, this is the minimum penalty, this is the minimum fee, and it applies to all football stadiums in Italy. Like
Yeah.
that's a way to go about it. But the problem
that's
is
what
that many, some clubs would not want to do that because they are afraid that because they are fearful and scared that a big part of their fan base might not turn up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know
Omar?
what?
that's what
At the
they
end
did
of the
with
day,
hooligans in England. They gave
exactly.
degrees. A third degree hooligan known to the police is banned
Well,
from
then,
every stadium in
but
England.
you'll find new fans by doing that. You might lose money
Yeah,
over a small period of time. Maybe there should be a solidarity fund to make up for that if fans don't turn up for a few seasons, just to make a club survive because the club is seriously acting towards racism and racist chants. Like
Yeah.
again, there's both things that the clubs can do themselves. There's things that the Serie A and the Lega Calcio and Serie A and Serie B can do collectively. There's but nothing is happening. And just making an example of one club or two fans, for me, is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It doesn't impress me.
And that's where we stand, but the problem is that we seem to be, and this is why one of the main reasons I wanted to do this show and specifically bring you on, because you are not a Juve supporter, but we see things very much the same. And when you go on social media, every little instance that you try to bring up gets turned into this hate towards the team, and the biases that stand there get involved. And to be honest, they turn the blinders on. They turn the blinders on to the biggest picture. And like I said, the biggest shame in all of this is that the fact that everybody is losing sight of the main issue.
Yeah.
Everybody is
It is.
losing the at the
Well,
end of the
that's what
day.
happens when, yeah, because there is a degree of whataboutism, of course, because when you talk about, when people say, oh, but what about that time, that, and it's like, well, no, can we just focus on this now? And then like, to me, it's this notion that if you or I call out racism in one instance, then we're automatically not calling out the other. I don't understand that line of reasoning. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't understand
I
how
think
people
when
think when
you
they say stupid shit like that.
I think when you talk about whataboutism, when when it's in regards to stuff that happens in the past, I'm less interested. And what are you going to do about it in the future is the more concerning issue for me.
Thank you. I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. I
I feel
agree.
like
And
the
and
major issue is why we're not looking at all the scenarios the same. And that's why, like, the whole whataboutism and stuff, it's not to brush off the current, but it's why all of a sudden? Why are we picking and choosing? Why is there eight
exactly.
instances? Why is there 8 instances between the last penalty?
No, they
And
shouldn't
that's to
be. They
shine a
should
light
be.
on the league. And I think
Yeah.
people are
No.
right in
Agreed.
doing that.
No, they should do that. But what I'm talking about is that immediately when this happens, it becomes, why didn't you say anything 25 months ago or 50 that last week about Kostic? Motherfucker, I didn't see it. What do you want me to do? Like, it's like I wasn't there. I saw this. I watched this game. What do you want from me? And are you so fucking dumb that you think that I'm for racism against this but not that? What's the matter with you? Like, do you see what I'm
What's
saying? Like, that's the shit that pisses me off. It's like, what? Stop it.
but again, like the Stankovic in Rome was pretty unsettling for me because what it turned into in the footage that I saw was more praising Mourinho for getting up and
Yeah.
putting his hand out
Yeah,
to the
which is
curva than
ridiculous.
actually addressing the fact that Stankovic was just
Ridiculous.
racially abused, for Christ's sake.
Exactly. Exactly. No, I agree 100% with
This
that.
is
I think
why
you're right.
I don't really give a shit about whataboutisms and everything because I think all instances need to be put forth and treated at an equal level. And for me, yeah, if you want to bring up an instance from 6 months ago that was not treated the same, I think, yes, put pressure on the league, pull up the videos, pull up. They used a video, for Christ's sake, on some type of intro to a game or whatever on an official platform and whatnot that you could hear the chants in the background. So if we want to talk about whataboutisms, I don't give a shit how long it is. We go back to 2019 when they said they're taking a strong stance, and now people want to say it's whataboutism. No, it shines a light that I don't think they're actually putting forth the effort necessary to fix things properly.
100%. 100%.
I don't think they're doing
And that's
that.
what's so exhausting. And that's why I just find the entire notion of this becoming a football tribalism and into a fan thing. Oh, your club, your fan base is irrelevant because they all do it. It's an Italian football problem. It's not a Juve problem. It's not an Inter problem. It's a Italian football problem. Simple as that. And if you don't treat it as such, well, this shit show's just going to continue.
And that's exactly it. But the reasoning here, having you on, and Nima, I know like it's you cause a stir, but hey, everybody sees things differently and whatnot. But in this instance, this was a good indicator of how close we actually do see things in the grand scheme of things. People, I think, and the problem for me was that we were dealing with such a touchy subject that you have to take fandom out of the equation completely.
Completely
You have to
remove
take
it.
that out of the equation completely. And that was the biggest thing. And I hope that people that see this, people that view this, whatever, can actually see how close and see that maybe, just maybe, in those discussions and maybe some different approaches need to be taken because we're losing sight of the main problem.
Yeah. No,
Very,
I agree
very much.
100%.
Very, very
I agree
much.
100%.
Nima, we're never going to
Agreed
solve things
100%.
in one
Agreed
day. We're never going to
100%.
solve things on an hour podcast or whatnot. But we enjoyed having you on. Like I said, we're going to have you back and do something more game related, which is what we
Yes.
love, is talking about the matches, talking about the games. But I felt with the heat that was coming and everything and all around, it was important for us to bring somebody that actually supports another club that has also had racist incidents. And
Let me put it to you. I'm seeing some dumb comments about your own club. Let me be crystal clear. I've been an Interista since 1989. I have never set foot in the Curva Nord, and I'm proud of that fact, and I never will. So, drawing your own fucking conclusion from that. I'm sorry, but this is the thing that pisses me off about this notion that you can't call out racism of another club because what, you honestly think that I support that? How dumb are you? Seriously.
I don't
It's
think,
exhausting. It's
yeah,
exhausting.
it's maybe, I think it's, again, we're dealing with a touchy subject. And right now, again, whataboutism kind of deflects from the fact that, and I remind everybody, Juve and Juventini, I don't think Juventini mind us being set as an example. But I don't like necessarily,
Well, I
again,
mind
going
it,
back to
Alberto.
social
I
media and
mind
what
it.
people
I
do.
mind it. I mind that if you are just being set an example and there's no consistency across the board, I mind that because it's not going away. Then we're just going to be here in a week's time. Like,
But
this is the
no,
thing. There needs to be consistency and coherency
yes,
here,
yes,
Alberto.
absolutely.
That's the
But what
problem.
I'm saying is, what makes this thing so heated and what continues to bring in this fandom and whatnot is the fact that on social media you have way too many trying to take a moral high ground off their clubs and missing out on the fact that there's instances where everyone's club, I can assure you, at some point has been the victim of racism, has had players that are victims of racism, and has had on the other side where supporters of that club have done something. We can be on both sides of it. So it makes it heated, it makes it crazy, and continues to bring in the fandom when people try to take that moral high ground on social media, which is
I
just
mean,
garbage,
one of the
which
things I
continues.
loved that Juventus fans did was when Benucci's disgusting comments after what happened to Moise Kean. Juventus fans all over the world, globally and in Italy, completely destroyed him on social
Yeah,
media and
yeah,
dismantled him. I thought that was awesome.
rightfully so. You don't say it's 50-50. This is racism, for Christ's sake.
50-50.
You know, his
It
defense
reminds
was, and
it reminds
Benucci's
me
no
of
stranger to being
it
awful with the
reminds me
mic and
of that.
whatnot. He came out and said he was misunderstood. No, like, you literally said it's 50-50. And again, we are not condoning racism. That's just another example that people have to wake up. Do not take a moral high ground on this because of your fandom. No,
Yeah.
no. This is a massive, massive issue. And I guarantee you, your club, and to be honest, even when, like it was brought up in this live chat, even when somebody puts forth a racist chant towards a player on another team, you're in turn causing racism towards the players on your own friggin' club. We all have players of color on our team as well. It's a joke. It's a joke. It's not going to get solved in one pod, but everybody's
No.
got to understand right now with this touchy subject, we have to be very careful on social media. And I think we lose sight of what we all need to do to help it. Because in North America, like I said, you don't get away with that shit. You don't even make it out of the damn
No, you
stadium.
don't.
And the same
You
needs
don't
to
get away
happen
with
there.
that.
And we need to stop fighting each other and working together to bring this thing to a bloody end. Because it's a much, much bigger problem than what jersey you choose to wear. And that's the bottom line. That's the bottom
Exactly.
line. Nima,
Exactly. Couldn't agree
it's
more.
been a pleasure having you on. Omer and I are going
Always.
to tackle some Juventus news and get into that for everybody. All right. We will chat again after the show. I thank you for taking the time, man.
You're welcome, and thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you guys. And I think that when you have these conversations and calmly and rationally and openly, I think that's when you get somewhere.
Yeah,
And yeah, no, I agree with you 100%.
absolutely.
And take care, guys. I'll talk to you guys soon. It was a pleasure to be on, and would love to come on in some other time. Take care.
Love it. Love
Ciao.
it. We will definitely
Thank
have
you,
you
Nima.
on.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Take care.
Buona Pasqua a tutti.
Yes,
Ciao.
Buona Pascha to you and yours as well. Ciao.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, Omer. So it's heated, everybody. It's heated.
Yeah, so let's try to focus on what actually is football.
Yeah, it's a crazy one, man. I know that he's controversial. He created a stir yesterday. In his opinion, he did not. He was not the one that created the stir. We know what went down. Um, People are gonna look at it in their own ways. Everyone has their own opinions. I'm not. I don't have a dog in the fight. Everybody knows that. Omar, you don't either.
No.
It is what it is. People, when
On the
you're,
contrary,
what's that?
I think to the reaction to everything that happened is the proper reaction. I wish every racism case would have that wave of flooding everything and posting the videos and showing who's responsible from every stadium, from everywhere, and doesn't just get swept under the rug.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm talking more to the events of on social media and how it went down in a video and whatnot, and being out of context or whatnot, and everybody's gonna battle back and forth and see it how they see it. For me, I would never. I just don't want to judge a character right off clips or whatever. Like context is everything. In his own words, it was a reach, whatever. Nima's got his own words and whatnot, but the biggest thing for us is showing we're a lot closer in beliefs and where we all need to do our due diligence on social media to help be a solution rather than create more problems just because of the crest on what we wear. That's how I feel. In terms of
Yeah.
football, let's get back to football and what we actually do love the most. It's unfortunate that all these have events have marred everything going on and whatnot. But we've got Lazio tomorrow. We're gonna be obviously doing the live match day where it's gonna be all football tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. Okay, we've got some news. Omar, do you want to recap some of the news and what's going on today?
Let's see, because Lou did them this morning, but it
And
was
Omar, where's the
mainly.
beater, man? Apex is asking, where's the wife beater?
Oh, it's only for game days.
There you go. Only for game days.
Yeah. So not a whole lot. Allegri's press conference. Whoever wants to read it, and then is welcome to go on our Twitter account, and we have it all there. Not a whole lot. Everything was kind of around the issue. That was the main news in the past 2 3 days. Nothing really to add. Gatti might reserve his place. We might see Sandro. We might see some shifts in the lineup towards the match. Maybe Sandro will start. The Shiri, obviously. Quadrado is banned for 3 games, including league matches. And yeah, just not a whole lot. Everything was about
So
what we've discussed in the past hour.
we've got Illing and Barnechea obviously playing with Next Gen yesterday. They're not going to be
Yeah.
on the team sheet for the Lazio match. Okay. Allegri again having to speak to those moments in the last match against Inter, and even just the closing moments, just saying that obviously is something terrible and should never actually happen. And he said coaches and managers need to set an example. So there's something else as well, but not really much details in terms of what he means by that necessarily. Chiesa doing better. He did well against Inter tomorrow. Max says he'll decide whether he'll play from the start or feature from the bench. Okay, so hopefully we can get Federico Chiesa. This is good signs though. The biggest thing for
Yeah.
us is if we can get him continually in the lineup, because it's been hit and miss right now as he tries to get back. And for us, that might be looking at his form and whatnot. We need to get him back continuously first and foremost, right, Omar?
Yeah. Yeah. And we
Before we
are
can
going to
actually get
see.
to a point where we expect more out of performances.
Yeah, and we might even see Bonucci and Pogba called up to the trip to Lazio, which is which Max will have the entire team for the first time. I mean,
Yeah.
no one injured. Quadrado is obviously off, but
Bonucci and
Everyone
Pogba
healthy.
could potentially be on that list. Yes. Some lineup notes are that Gatti should be in the defense once again. De Chilio will take the place of Quadrado. Of course, Milik in attack. Moise Keane will be facing suspension, so we know that he won't be available there. And honestly, yeah, that's really the news in a nutshell. This one against Lazio, I feel pretty strong and confident about it. We'll get to all the game day stuff tomorrow, but we've handled them pretty good and we've neutralized them very well. Asari led side, and it seems like they can never really figure out what to do with SMS when they play us.
Yeah, Lazio are interesting because whenever they're doing great, um, we seem to be their, their black sheep, the one hurdle they can't get over. I mean, they would beat Napoli and they would beat Milan, but usually when they face us, they don't look as good as they are actually in the league. I don't know what it is, but they mostly seem off when they play us. I mean, I couldn't imagine they were like the most informed team apart from Napoli before the last time we met them, and we won the game 3-0, which was even more surprising than we winning against Inter the week before that. So we'll wait and see. I'm optimistic, but I hate going to the Olimpico. It's a tough stadium to play in, and that game could have a lot of meaning. I do want to say that against Inter, we kind of saw the Juve that we didn't want to see. Not the Juve that we saw in the past 2 months, the one who took control and pressed high and was filled with intensity. It was more like it didn't work for us in the first 10 minutes, so we'll sit back. More the type of Juve we've seen in the beginning of the season, where they shut off after 10 or 20 minutes. It got better later, and Inter got more tired, but it wasn't the Juve we've come to know in the past couple of months. So I hope it will change against Lazio.
Yeah, we got to talk about Gatti. So, rumored before the return after World Cup break that he was going to start getting much more minutes. What's interesting is now you start to get the rumblings that maybe, just maybe, Juve is going to keep Sandro from hitting that number for the automatic renewal. And that's playing into it. So, what do you think?
Nah, I think that's a conspiracy.
A
I wouldn't
conspiracy?
buy into it. Yeah, I don't see it happening. I don't see Allegri taking part in a scheme like that. He's too dignified, and he has he has more of a word and more of a say in the club right now. I find it hard to believe that Allegri will take part in that.
But if
It's
Sandro
not a
won't go 2 years to spread it out and just wants to take the 1 year, you don't think Juve could just say, "Oh, we'll just shut it down," and Gatti's starting to play well. We don't have to put ourselves in this situation, and we could save more on the salary, which is one of their main project. Is it that wild of a conspiracy theory?
It wouldn't have been if it was still Nedved and Agnelli and Orvabene at the helm. But with the new guys, I don't know them enough to know if they're capable of going through something like that. And so I watch the videos sometimes of the best plays of players for Juve, and we gotta remember, although they're not doing great now, they did have great times with the club, and they've been here for a long time. So Sandro, I mean, he started awful and then he picked it up, and now suddenly Gatti is picking it up, and he deserved the chances he does get. So I don't want to hate on Sandro that much, to trick him into not renewing. Either tell him we don't want to renew, or we are going to renew your contract. Don't play around it.
Yeah.
Don't be vague. He doesn't deserve it. I mean, he's been in the club for 7 years.
Yeah. So Suarez and Chiesa and Di Maria slated to start tomorrow. Well, we just went through the fact that Chiesa is undecided yet, according to Max Allegri. If I had to guess, I'd probably say Di Maria starts. But
Actually,
Vlahovic,
the report said that Milik will partner Vlahovic up front, or either Vlahovic will partner Milik, so Milik is a guarantee in the lineup.
let's talk about that just real quick here. Which would you prefer?
Honestly, by this point, I think Vlahovic needs a bit of a break. I think he needs maybe some time on the bench. It looks Not like a player who has any confidence is what he's doing or any direction. He seems stressed every time the ball gets to him. Maybe you need, to let it sink. Game
I'm
in, game out, playing and expected to perform. Maybe Milik is the right call right now.
I'm kind of on the other side in the sense that I feel when it's more mental, and I would have to say that I think a lot of it's more mental with Vlahovic, that maybe you want to keep going with it for a bit. And I actually would partner him with Milik rather than Di Maria for the next one, because I actually think Milik will benefit him more because he'll stay closer to him than Di
Oh, I
Maria
have no
does.
problem. I have no problem with both of them starting. If we
Yeah.
have to pick one to partner Di Maria, I would probably go Milik for this one, but I don't mind both of them starting together. That
Yeah,
could be interesting. That could work out.
I think I would partner both of them together in order to try and see if we can get just the way Milik plays would help Vlahovic, and he stays closer to the top there. Di Maria drifts a lot and drops very, very deep. So it's just one way of thinking. But there are a lot of fans that now have shifted their criticism to Max Allegri, saying, why do you continuously go to Vlahovic? Why are you continuously going to Vlahovic? So I mean, why would you stop? Like, you have to try to get him going. You have to.
The question is, how much is it hurting Juve? In a general sense, when you look at it, what's better for Juve right now? Building Vlahovic's confidence back up and his form, or playing a guy who's proved to be in form,
Yeah.
like Milik?
Yeah.
Because we don't have points to spare. I mean, we need every point we can get.
Absolutely. It's
See, so that's the issue. That's the conflict that I have between playing him and not playing him right now.
well, do you think it's hurting him like Juve overall? Do you think it's hurting Juve overall playing him continuously?
It might. I mean, our striker doesn't score at the moment.
But I go back to Milik and Keane not exactly lighting it up.
Oh, that wasn't working out either. I didn't think it was a good partnering. I don't know
Not
why,
even
but it
just them
just
as a pair, but even if you were to split them up, it's like we don't exactly just go off all of a sudden because Vlahovic is not in there.
yeah. So I look at the overall play and at what everyone brings to the table aside from goals. And I think out of the three, Milik right now brings the most because he can hold up the ball and he drifts around more. And I don't know, he just seems more dangerous at the moment and more beneficial to the team's play.
Yeah. And that's a fair assessment. He does play much better in terms of everything and build up and hold up and everything compared to Milik compared to Keane and Vlahovic. So it's a fair assessment. It's going to be interesting to see what Max actually does for this lineup. But we do have a decent break before the Sporting match, which will be obviously on the Thursday after that. So a decent break. I don't expect Max to do anything wild. Like, he will get after this result 1000%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so we saw arguably our strongest that we could play against Inter there. I would expect our strongest we could possibly bring out against Lazio as well. Agreed?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think the main focus should still be the league ahead of everything, and it just not downplaying the significance of Europa League. But the league is important for Juve.
Yeah.
I mean, guaranteeing European spot is more important than anything. And with all the investigation, everything looming over this season in particular, you can't drop points to Lazio. You can't start, taking your foot off the gas and suddenly you lose the case because it's Italy and the spirits are down. So you're knocked out of the Europa League 2, and suddenly you're left with nothing and no chance of Europe.
Yeah.
So have that, base promise that you are going to be there and aim for the rest.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Everybody, hey, take it easy out there. Take it easy. I've already got, I see the DMs, I see all the messages. Everybody's getting pretty fired up. It's a touchy subject. I hate that, we have to talk about it, but it's also important based on how we operate on social media. Nobody wants to see anybody's character be attacked. Okay. That's why it's a dangerous game to play when we try to pledge allegiance to clubs and stuff and start to lose sight of what's actually gone down. I still believe that the term whataboutism is completely ridiculous. I stand behind that. And I said it all show, even while Nima was here. I think it's completely ridiculous to say that somebody can't bring up an instance that happened. I don't care if it was a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever, because it's all relevant, because you cannot pick and choose where you punish when you're dealing with something to the severity and seriousness of racism. You can't pick and choose. So don't feed back to me whataboutism. Fuck that. It's all equally awful, disgusting. And when people start to question each other's character on social media, it's where it gets ugly. Do not get sucked into that trap. Forget about the clubs involved and realize we all need to do better and we all need to be part of the solution. Okay, everybody? It's Friday. It's Good Friday. And we had to tackle such an ugly topic and whatnot. But it's important that people get this out and just forget about allegiances, all right? We get back to football tomorrow. I want to say Buona Pascha, Happy Easter to everybody, all right? All the best to you and yours. Tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, we get back to what matters the most, the football, okay? We're going to get you hyped up for that match. I'm going to be calling the action. I'm going to be bringing you a live watch along, all right? I look forward to seeing you all there, and we'll be able to talk about this, all right? Now, RB Comps, simply saying, I want those people that shouted the chants banned for life. They shouldn't be allowed back in forever. We got in a great discussion with Nima. I actually agree fully in what we said. It shouldn't just be one stadium that you're banned. You do it, period. You're out. You're out across Italy. Make it a standard. Make it the board. Set the bar high and punish them, all right? Set the bar high. We need to do much, much better. Rino, Buona Pascha to you and yours as well. Everybody, enjoy your Friday. We will be back tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, as always, to tackle the match, all right? We get back to what matters, okay, the most, and that we enjoy the most is the football itself. These incidents need to stop and become completely whitewashed from all of us, okay? Shout out to Jonathan Grade, who has been a guest on our show. I might bring him in tomorrow to get ready for the Lazio match because he was at that Inter game and he has a few pieces to say, but he actually did his part. He had his phone working overtime. He has footage that he has supported to Juventus. Okay, he has supplied them with. He is supporting Juventus in tracking down the people that were doing that. So to Jonathan Grade, a massive round of applause, all right, for doing your part. Everyone in stadiums needs to do that. Okay? Stop playing what ifs and hypotheticals and stuff and get down to the nitty gritty. We all need to do